a very exciting day today. Michael Wigington, it's been 7.5 years since you first interviewed me to work at CAMHS Professionals, and the tables are turned today, which is good for me. Just a little bit of an intro, I guess. It's easy to see that the successful entrepreneur Michael Wigington, just looking on LinkedIn, obviously the founder of CAMHS Professionals, founder of Young Wellbeing Hub, founder of Young Care Hub, founder of Emotional Family Wellbeing Services. So you've had such success over the last kind of decade or thereabouts in this space. So we're going to definitely touch on that at some points today. But what I also want to make sure we're doing today is find out more about the person behind the success. How did you get, through wherever you started off into recruitment in the first place? What was your recruitment journey like? And then what's your journey been like as an entrepreneur? So really looking forward to having a conversation today. And it's interesting to be on the other side of the interview. How are you feeling today?
Good. Excited to get into it.
All right, so the best foot forward, I guess, is just to kick off with things and say, what did you do before recruitment? What were the early years for Michael Wigington like?
Yeah, for me, it was pretty challenging, if I'm honest, from leaving school. So grew up in Dagenham, quite a working class, tough town to grow up in. And I dropped out of school at 15. So I probably had some dark sort of mental health challenges as a 15-year-old. And my work, it took me a while to really get into work. I actually got addicted to online gaming, which is a bit crazy, from 15, and was sat in the house like for 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day gaming. It was quite a struggle. Fast forward a little bit, I managed to get back to college, got into uni, then got kicked out of university, was a philosophy and politics student. So again, had another setback at 21 and didn't know what to do with my life, really. Was a bit lost, 21, kicked out of university, and decided the best thing for me was to go and do a season in Ibiza, which changed my life a little bit. I'm sure you worked in Ibiza for a little bit yourself. Went to Ibiza, had a bit of a mad time, was probably running away from a lot, and probably was still at that time, probably still had hidden mental health problems, I don't know. But had a bit of a wild time, lost 5 years of my life very quickly, got to 25 and thought to myself, what the hell do I do with my life now, essentially? I'd had a little go at some side businesses, I'd PR'd in Ibiza, but essentially found myself at 25, bit part of the raving scene at the time, but just stopped enjoying it and thought, what am I going to do with my life next? Was at a bit of a crossroads, and I knew a few people that had got into recruitment, knew they were doing well, and I thought, you know what? I've done a bit of sales PRing whilst I was in Ibiza. I knew a few people that were making a few quid, and I knew it's an industry where you could make some money without having a degree. And obviously, I'd flunked university, so decided I was going to have a go at recruitment, and that was my decision.
So I guess there's kind of two parts to talk about, really, when we're talking about your success that you've had in your journey is the entrepreneurial side, and then there's the recruitment side. So I think because the entrepreneurial side has been the bigger part, I think let's touch on the recruitment side first. So you're now in recruitment. If we cast our mind back before you've set up your business, what was those first what was that first recruitment role like? How was it hard to get into recruitment, and what were those first couple of years like before you ventured out into entrepreneurship?
It was tough. It was really tough. And if I'm honest, I was completely unpolished at the time, and I was really blagging every interview. I'd had my own events business where I'd been a nightclub promoter, and I remember at the time I was putting on my CV that I'd sold event space, which was a blag basically, to help me try and get my foot in the door in recruitment. And I remember literally I must have had 15, 20 interviews, and I just kept getting to the role play part. So I was doing all right at my face to face because I weren't bad with people, but I was telling people I'd done phone sales before. And midway through most of these interviews, they were putting you on the floor, testing you on the phones, and it would go horribly wrong at that stage. And most times I kept getting sent home. And to be honest, I didn't know what else I was going to do if I couldn't get into recruitment. It was like I was tunnel vision. I was set on this, and I didn't know what else I could blag because I needed a career where I could kick on from and make some money. So I kept I kept at it. I was resilient. And actually, the reason I got my job is quite bad, really. My mum was a head teacher at the time, and she was using a recruitment agency, and she was a client for a recruitment agency. So there's a company in Loughton, Remedy Recruitment Group, and they got me in, and Rob Dawkins, bless him, I'm pretty sure he only gave me the job to keep my mum sweet at the time because it was in his interest, right? And out of everyone, they were the first ones to give me an opportunity. So that's how I got my first job, and it was very tough.
Nice. Hello to Dawn as well. If you're watching, that's Mike's mum. So most people, when they get into the working world, we work in recruitment all the time, and one of the biggest things we hear is people want security, stability. So you had security, you had stability in the recruitment business that you were in. So can you just take us from the journey of being safe, secure, happy in recruitment, and then was there a spark, or was there something that happened which made you think, actually, I can do this on my own, or do I go into a new market, that eventually transitioned from an idea to actually running your first business?
Yeah, it'd be good just to talk through like that recruitment bit before it got there, I guess.
Sure.
So day one, you got to sort of bear in mind I'd just come off the back of doing 5 summers in Ibiza, right? So this is my first real career, first sales job. And I'm still absolutely terrified because they've given me a job thinking that I can do phone sales, and I've never done phone sales. So I'm on the desk. Oh, actually, funny enough, the first day I was supposed to start, they was going to put me on the education team, and I think the education manager kind of took one look at me, and she was like, "Don't want him." Like I could see like there was stuff going on in the office, and it was awkward. The first day, you're thinking this is not looking good. I'm sat there ready to start, man. I can see the manager. Something was up, and I still to this day don't know what it was. Anyway, cut a long story short, both directors had been asked to try mental health for the last sort of 2 or 3 years prior to me coming, because the family had owned another company called Sugarman Group, who were very successful in mental health. I think Rob had. It turned out I think they didn't want me in the education team. The lady who I was supposed to start with that day, and Rob said, "I'll give him a go at that mental health piece." And so by default, I got put on a desk in a business that had never done healthcare before or mental health, or I think they'd done healthcare like 10 years prior, but sat next to an education team and was asked to basically learn mental health and start recruiting in mental health. So yeah, there was a lot happening. Sort of first day, second day in, I've got a blag that I'm actually good in recruitment. All of a sudden, I'm starting a division, which was a bit crazy. And I remember like absolutely bricking it. Essentially, I was really lucky. I think on my second or third day, the team went out on visits to visit schools, the education team that I was sitting next to, and I remember picking up the phone and literally trying to make as many cold calls as I can, because I knew I'd blagged that I'd done cold calling before. And I think I must have made like 300 calls in 3 hours. And I was absolutely terrible, but I was trying to get the fear of, and trying to learn as quick as I can with no one around me to see that I'd never done it before. So that was kind of the entry level, or where I was at when I started. But I was really lucky. It was, and we were both, it was literally learning as I went. I remember, I think 2 months in, it must have been about 6 weeks in, 7 weeks in, I was saying to my director Rob, we'd learnt what NHS jobs was, and we'd learnt that the NHS roles, they'd post on the NHS website, and they'd give us names for managers, and we'd call managers, and we'd ask them like could we find the person for them, and that's how things started. And I remember my first actual manager, it was North East London Foundation Trust, and they gave us a role. We worked it. I remember saying to Rob at the time, how much did we charge for this nurse? Because he didn't have a clue. I didn't have a clue. And he was like, just find out what the candidate wants and add £10. And somehow Ben Leo, his name was, my first ever placement. And it all worked. Placed our first candidate and we were off. And that first placement was in children's mental health. So ironically, a sector that really resonated with me from being a teenager. And from there, I said to myself, rather than sort of be jack of all trades, let's really like niche down and become the best in a certain environment, or in a certain sector. And I just made it my business to go and be the best at that. And I was really lucky. Kicked on. I think before I knew it, I think I had like 11 placements in my first sort of 5, that month 2 to month 5, and now I've got off the back of my 5 seasons in Ibiza, and I think I brought that energy to to my first opportunity, and the company backed me. They helped build a team under me. Quickly took it from sort of like me to a team of 6 in that 2 years. We didn't know what frameworks were at the time. We got ourselves on 2 NHS frameworks. I got approached to be a director after 6 months of being in this business via another business, which I very nearly took, but didn't. Stuck where I was. And then, yeah, I think we'll probably touch on it a bit, but I was entrepreneurial from a teenager, like really, really entrepreneurial. I'd tried businesses. I'd set up my own events. I'd set up a business at school.
What was the business at school?
It was a server business. So again, I mentioned about getting addicted to online gaming. So year 9 at school, I'd stopped going to school. Instead, I was at home playing games all day. And a bit of the entrepreneur in me was basically I'd rent server space to fellow gamers, and I'd buy a dedicated server, which cost me so much, and I'd rent out space on the server to individual teams that game. And I remember even when I was at school before I fully left, my phone would be ringing and people would be moaning because their server had gone down while I was at school and things like that. So yeah, I'd done that. Beefer, I'd bought and sold vintage clothes. Yeah, I'd done the nightclub stuff already. And I think from day 2 or 3 in recruitment, as soon as I realised what it was, looked at the environment, loved the buzz of the sales, I knew in my heart that I was going to go on to set up a recruitment company. And it was about biding my time, learning the industry, having enough skills and knowledge to do it. And I think I got to a point knowing that I'd set up the healthcare side of things from scratch for that business. It didn't feel too daunting to go and do it again, because I'd literally done it in that business. And the most difficult thing for me was actually the boss. I was really, really close to my director at the time, and he was actually leaving about the same time to go and do his own thing. But the founder of the business, Daniel Sugarman, he was a good guy. He was really good to me. And I think the most difficult part of that was actually telling him that I was going to leave, because I knew it'd kill him a little bit. And yeah, that was tough. I was a bit of a coward. I actually waited till we went on holiday and then handed my notice in, which is terrible. But yeah, I knew in my heart, I felt like I had enough skill, and I went and did it.
Nice. I'm interested because, again, most people when you're a teenager, it's like, I just want to get a part-time job. I just want to get a bar job or JD Sports or something like that. Do you think you know where that entrepreneur spirit came from? Because as you said, you ran a server business, you ran a fashion business, and you ran your events business as well. What do you think it is? Can you pinpoint a time, or has it always just felt like a compulsion just to do your own thing and that kind of stuff? Have you got any idea where you kind of feel like that comes from?
I think it's difficult. If I look back, growing up, if I look at like the earliest influences, and I don't know if this directly had an impact, but being from Dagenham, not having a lot of money, dad paint and decorator, in and out of work, I think in the early days, my mum would always have a little side hustle on the go just to try and make a bit of extra money. And I remember, this may not, I don't know if this was an influence, but if you look at it, it probably was. I remember my mum had started selling fake clothes, you know, like dodgy Adidas t-shirts, right? And I'd go to school and she'd put me in this Adidas t-shirt, and I'd come out of school and my mum would be on the playground selling these fake t-shirts to everyone. Next day, go into school, everyone's wearing the same t-shirts as me, right? Proper bright orange, logos as big as you can imagine. And then that was like at 5-6 years old, and I'd be at home and my mum would have all the t-shirts out all around the living room. All the mums of all the school would be around my house. So I don't know if that had like an impact, but maybe subconsciously I was already seeing like the ability, you know, my mum trying to make a few quid early on to make ends meet. And I think the other thing was, growing up in Dagenham, I remember feeling like from an early age a bit of like sense of injustice. Like I remember thinking, why can other people afford certain things, or why have they got a certain opportunity? And I remember that like really pissing me off as a youngster. And I remember even sort of being 8-9 years old, mum walking home from primary school. And I remember one day, I think there was a girl following me home, and I said like I fancied her or something. And I remember her walking into one of the expensive houses to make it look like we lived at the more expensive house, but things like that from a not like, I think that resonated with me when, you know, it had an impact on me. And I think that never left me. And I think I was really determined from a young age to balance, you know, to make life a bit more balanced. And I didn't want people, I didn't think it was fair that other people got certain things, or there was other families, you know, that person was no better than me at certain things. Why did they get to live in a nicer place or to go on better holidays? And I think that really stuck with me from a young age, and I was always conscious of that, I suppose.
Yeah, I can relate to that myself. Being from Coventry as a child, I always felt like there was something bigger and better than Coventry. Right, so Michael Wigington, teenage entrepreneur, internationally known in Ibiza with his clothing brand, gamer, server, manager, etc. You've worked in your first recruitment business, so you know you can build a desk because you've effectively done it, and you've also got that from a young age inbuilt entrepreneurial spirit. How did that feel then when you went from having the goals, having the idea, having the vision and the confidence to then now you haven't got a guaranteed income, now you're in your bedroom, now everything that you do matters? What was it like the first do you remember the first day, or what was it like when you first started out and it was the reality that this is what you're doing now?
Yeah, I remember I was living, you know, Blaine, one of my friends. I was living with Blaine at the time in Bucks Hill, and I remember going home to him and being like, I'm leaving. He was going, "You're mad. Like, what are you doing?" Like, they love me in that recruitment place. I was on probably like, I don't know, 80, 90 grand. Bearing in mind, I've been on £18,000 a year as an entry level job year or two before. And it is nuts for most people. It's nuts to give that up. Went back to him and I was like, I need the living room. I'm putting a desk in the living room. I don't care if you like it or not. Like, you're going to have to support me here. And he was like, head in his hands. You have completely lost the plot. So yeah. And I went and I did it. I nearly sort of on leaving, I still wasn't sure entirely how I was going to do it at the time. I went and spoke to a number of investors, and they'd most of the, I think about 4 of the 5 investors that I'd spoke to had all offered me a gig basically, and I think it was going to be like a 50-50 split where they'd cover my wages for a year, and looked at all of that, and then luckily someone told me about Stuart Roberts' company called T-Boss, back office company. Didn't have a clue about invoice finance and banking and how that worked. And through meeting Stuart, he'd explained to me that actually you might not need to give your shares away. There might be a way we can finance this where the bank give you a loan. So I was really lucky because I came very, very close to giving like the majority of shareholdings away from my business at that stage. And it's a good job that I never ended up doing that, essentially, because I don't think we would be nearly in the place we are today. So found another way to make it work, and then it was literally on me, and it was challenging. It was challenging. I think the difference is, even now, I'm not that great from working from home, right? I didn't have enough to make an office, so I'd had my little office in my living room. We were still 25, 26 at the time, so you probably haven't got as much discipline. You're still going out a bit when you had the money. I think I left the company with about £4,000 in my bank account, and it probably, you know, I was scrimping and scraping, so I probably had 2 or 3 months to get a placement. Otherwise, it was just not going to work. And yeah, I think I was, again, a little bit cheating here, though. I'm not going to lie. I was lucky. My mum was a head teacher at the time, and she'd just got a new job in a new school. So I was very lucky. I had a bit of a lifeline in terms of, I think I placed 1 or 2 teaching assistants in her school, which kept the lights on just about and kept me going. And then I remember there was a guy I'd met him about a year before. We'd never actually worked together. And I remember Dave Abbott was his name. He was a hospital manager. And I'd met him, it was in the Marriott Hotel, Waltham Abbey. And I remember meeting him at the time. And you know when you just get a great connection with someone. And at the time, he didn't have nothing he could help me with, and I didn't have anything I could help him with. But I remember leaving that meeting like butterflies in my stomach, like probably still to this day, and it was like almost like destiny. And 6 months in to starting from a bedroom, he gave me a call and he said to me, "Mike, just taken over a hospital. They're weeks away from being shut down by the CQC. I need 12 nurses. Don't care what you charge me. They've got to be great quality. I need them now." And I remember that moment I was working I think for about 4 days straight, I worked 13-hour days to get these nurses, and did a great job. They ended up working for me for 2 or 3 years, and that literally built the foundations for everything that we've achieved today. So thank you, Dave Abbott, if you're listening. Yeah, you'll never know how much that opportunity sort of has done for me since.
I think there's kind of two things there which I really like and want to mention is, one, I think your journey, especially the conversation we're playing, kind of in some way sums up society's views on entrepreneurs, that they're crazy until they're successful and then they're lucky. You know what I mean? We often say, oh, they're so lucky to have this, they're so lucky to have that. But then we call them crazy for leaving a job, literally working out of a living room, kicking Blaine into his bedroom. I'm sure there's plenty of times he wanted just to chill out. But I think that's wonderful in that respect. And I also think one thing you've also mentioned as well, which is I think a lot of people don't understand in terms of the recruitment business. Again, recruiters have this not so great image to unpick people who've never done it. But you just highlighted something there. There's been several times that I know as a business that we've kept hospitals open because of us as a recruiter. And if you think recruiters are all, just cold calls and stress you out and, call you at the worst time, you don't actually see the full picture that we have literally kept hospitals open. And you, in that instance, kept a hospital open that would have had a huge impact. So I think that's just a wonderful story in and of itself. So, right. So first year, obviously you've gone from the bedroom. I'm working with you a year later and you're on your own. What's outside of obviously what happened with Dave Abbott? What were the challenges that year, or give us a little bit of an overview of what that looked like after Dave Abbott, but before I joined and then we had our time together?
Yeah, I was lucky. The market was buoyant at the time. I was great as a children's mental health recruiter, and I partly miss it. Like, I genuinely miss being on the phone a little bit. I was great. I managed to attract some amazing talent that was loyal to me, and it did my reputation wonders, really. And I think if you place good people into roles, naturally through word of mouth, your reputation gets better. And it was actually lovely then, because you didn't have all the noise outside of just being a recruiter, because you didn't have to manage teams, you didn't have to worry about overheads, you didn't have to worry about your finances. At the time, I was outsourcing all that, was super lean from a bedroom, but I always knew, as being an entrepreneur, that was never going to be enough, right? I wanted the bigger business. I knew there was more people we could help through the work we were doing. So yeah, that wasn't enough for me. And I'd had a couple of, and this was really difficult actually. One of my best friends at the time, and we're still good friends, luckily. But Dave Littledyke from my old company, we'd worked together. And a year in, he was like, "I'll come with you, Mike. I'll come with you. And there was a girl, Megan, as well. It was really good. She just started just before I left, and we was like, right, I got the office in South Woodford, as you know. The guys come over to work, and then I've got this 10-person office. I've got overheads for the first time. We got ourselves our first compliance officer as well, so there was 4 of us at that point. And then the billings dropped. I lost a few nurses. All of a sudden, I've got all these overheads that I've never had before. And it's just like, wow, this is the first time I'm feeling the stress, because I'm not used to having to make sure I'm paying other people for starts. And we were trying to get it going. And at the time, if you look back at our logo, it was terrible. No one knew who we were in the industry. And I think my guys had come from a semi-warm desk that I'd built at the old place, and had come into it with a new brand name. No one knew. And it was difficult, because Dave was one of my best friends, and I think we were 2-3 months in, and I'm feeling it, because I don't have any money to fall back on if it's not successful. I'm paying their wages now. It's completely eaten into my bottom line, and it was like really, really difficult. And I think we kept it going for 4 or 5 months, and then I had to have some difficult conversations with the guys, and I literally took the team out. And I had to let them go, which was kind of mutual. I think they knew it was not working out. And then I'm sitting in a 10-person office on my own, thinking, oh crap, like, what have I done here? Have I made the right decision? Was it the right thing leaving my business in the first place? I was kind of in a bit of a middle ground. And then we'd met a year or 2 prior in Ibiza, being filmed for Don't Tell the Bride. I'd had a good feeling about you when I met you, in terms of he'd be a great recruiter, this guy. And I think I reached out to you around that time, and we tried to make something work, and it worked.
Absolutely. So I'm interested in terms of vision, in terms of when you've left to set up your first business or first recruitment business, and it sounds like the vision initially was just make some placements, keep the lights on, that kind of stuff. Then the vision is, well, let's bring in a wave of people, and most entrepreneurs don't go into anything with the idea it's going to fail. They're prepared for it, but not expecting it, I guess. So how did the vision change over that first year in terms of you've gone from, right, I just need to make a placement, to now I've got two really good recruiters, the business is going to go moving forward, and then it's dropped down again, and then there's a new one. Did you have an end vision in mind, or was it more just get to the end of the week or get to the next 6 months? Or because for a lot of people, they have the capacity to be an entrepreneur, but they don't have the mindset. So what do you see as an entrepreneur that most people don't, which is kind of facilitates you continuing on that journey?
I think there's a few things you touched on there. I think, firstly, I really resonated with this market. So children's mental health, I'd been there. I'd been in therapy as a 15-year-old. I knew firsthand like the impact society was starting to have on young people. I knew firsthand that young people were slipping through nets. Waiting times were huge across the country. And I fully recognised that there was a lot of work that we could do in this space to help a lot of people. So I think that was one key thing. And you got to think at that time, there's huge, big corporate healthcare businesses. No one's really spotted that, or no one's put the time and attention into going to be the leader in that. And I felt that I'd seen a gap from really early on and tried to double, triple down in that space. So I think there was a vision there from the start to go and be the best at that. And I think that's stayed with me till even now. But then it's just being the best recruiter in the space. So I was really curious with all my clinicians. I genuinely was passionate about what they did. And I think your first goal is to be the best recruiter in the space so that everyone knows who you are. And then it was, right, let's build a business or a brand that's now, before everyone else gets sight of this market and everyone else piles into it, let's dominate it, let's be the best. And I was lucky because there wasn't lots of people trying to do it, and we did that. And I think the goal is, and it continues to just be, let's get better and better. Let's, I'm double, tripling down in the consultants that are working in the space, because there's just such a need across the country, and the vision is probably still the same now as it was then. It is to be the go-to name in our industry, to dominate it and to be just far superior than everyone else working in it, to be better. So, yeah, I don't know if that helps.
No, absolutely. I think it's funny doing this because you forget how much you forget. And I remember when I first started, the repetitive nature of the message of being niche market, be experts, deliver the highest quality of service. You are the brand. And you used to talk about this on a daily basis. And I also remember, which I think ties into the entrepreneurial spirit, you used to say, it's only so long before everybody else catches up to this idea that children's mental health is the future. And when you said things like that, it really made me see the entrepreneurial side of you more than just, this is what we're doing. It was that this is going to be such a big market, sadly, that the children's mental health market is such a big one, but you just kept constantly saying, we need to be experts, we need to be the person that's trusted, respected. So everything was built on a foundation of ethics, which goes against what my interpretation of recruitment was beforehand. And then fast forward to now, and so many of those businesses that were around before us have now really gone into that CAMHS market as well. But as you said, we are the go-to name. And I remember so much at the beginning of, so we're CAMHS Professionals, and we had to explain to everybody who we were. Whereas now you say you're CAMHS Professionals, people go, oh, okay. So it's just a testament to that. So, okay, so the vision has stayed the same, and I guess improves as we grow as a business. Now I'm interested, entrepreneurship is a balance of success and failures. So were there periods throughout the 8 years that you've been doing this, which were kind of like, I don't know what you want to call them, like checkpoints or pinch me moments where you thought, okay, we're actually doing something good here? Are there any of those moments that particularly stand out?
I think we've been lucky. We've been in a bit of a bubble. And if you took a graph and looked at our growth in terms of headcount, EBITDA, gross profit, it's been a lovely, steady was plain sailing. It was going in a lovely direction for a long time. I think challenges has been personally like managing that stress at times, having issues with the odd. We had a couple of guys commit fraud. We've had a few other things happen along the way. It's very difficult to deal with those things. But I think, and I still don't know if you know how close we came to literally going bankrupt 2-3 years ago, I think it was. We'd always outsourced our finance, as I said at the start, and we left the outsourcing the finance, and I'd never brought finance in-house, and I'd have to put a lot of faith into the finance managers that we brought in at the time. And we went through a period where we brought in a few finance managers, and it's very difficult because it's all good as a growing business, smashing every targets that we were setting ourselves for. But I had no idea about cash flow, and we were invoicing huge amounts of money. We thought on paper we're doing we were very successful, but we had a period where clients just wasn't paying us on time. And again, I talk about that invoice finance facility. So essentially, an invoice finance facility is a facility that you have with the bank, and when you raise an invoice with a client, the bank pay you on the day with that. So it gives you time to pay your contractors before the client pays you that actual money. So to give you some context, I think at the time we had a £5 million facility with NatWest, and we just couldn't get our clients to pay us on time, right? So we've got a 5 million kitty that we can borrow from NatWest, and we'd done the 5 million basically, and we've still got to keep payrolling candidates every week, and we're a contract business. So if we go one Friday where we can't pay our contractors, they literally switch agencies overnight to someone that can. And I remember NatWest brought their specialist team in to basically try and help us sort it out, because they want their money back as well. They've got £5 million on the line, and we'd had this. It was going on for about a year, and I remember the £5 million facility we had with the specialist team from NatWest were basically saying to me they're going to take control of the business because they want their money back, and they're starting to lose faith that we're ever going to get this money. And then we were basically overdrawn. I think we went from 6 million, and Rob, his name was, especially, and fair play to him. They stuck with us, but they were sending people in every 2 weeks, constantly pressuring me, worried that they were going to get their money back, and they kept going like overdrawn basically over our facility. I think we got 6 million, 7 million, and we got up to 8 million. And like Rob is like, Mike, like literally you don't understand, like the business is going bankrupt. And I remember there was 1 week where I was in the boardroom, and it's a payday as well on a Friday. I've got NatWest on the phone. We're not giving you no more money. We're not paying you. And I think everyone was getting expected to pay, like wake up and have their money in their account. And I'm sitting in the boardroom. I know no one's been paid, and I've got NatWest on the phone telling me they're not going to pay me. They're not going to give us money. So I've got no contractors going to get paid, and also I've got our internal. I think we were about 40 heads at the time, and everyone's like, "Where's my wages? Where's our wages?" And I actually remember I went out into the floor. I think I was a bit horrible to Christy. Christy was like, "Mike, no one's been paid. No one's been paid." And I'm like, I think I just like was a bit quick with her. And I remember like sitting in the boardroom, genuinely thinking, like, we might not be able to do this. And again, I had to beg NatWest, and I think they borrowed us. I think it was like luckily we managed to get in like loads of money the following week, but they were like, we're not doing it. And I think they bailed me out one more time, and I honestly think we were like a week or two away from going bankrupt, which was only like 2-3 years ago. So it's that for me, getting your finances in order, making sure your cash flow is good, like that was nearly our biggest hiccup, which nearly spoiled everything. But luckily, we just about came through it.
So obviously that day is kind of like, I guess, like the blackest, darkest day in terms of your time there. I'm interested to see, because as you say, we didn't really know the extent, which I guess is a credit to you in terms of being able to put a brave face on, which must have been the feeling of everything I've worked for is just slipping through my fingers. How did it feel on that day, and how did you how did you just keep pushing through? Because as you say, if you have a tough day at work, that's one thing, but to have a tough day, have 40 staff, hundreds of contractors out working, and if you don't manage to find a solution, hundreds of people are being affected. How did that feel, and how on earth did you manage to pull through it on that day?
I think that is the biggest challenge as an entrepreneur or someone owning a business. I think no matter what's going on in your personal life, you've broken up with your girlfriend, a family member has died, you're on holiday, you've still got people to answer to, and people are still expecting you to be on form, right? And I think if you talk about what actually has made me brilliant, I think I've been great at being able to turn up day in, day out, and to find a way to be on form and mask whatever shit is going on in your personal life, because it's going to have a negative effect on your team, and everyone's looking at you every day. And yeah, it's tough. That is probably the biggest weight on your shoulders as a business owner. I think you're carrying that constantly every night before you go to sleep. People don't see that people don't see that part of the job, and it's I don't know, you have to find a way to manage that stress, and you've got to sort of be able to throw that away, or when things are tough, you've got to be able to not hang on to that, and you've got to be able to embrace the good parts, right? And it's difficult. It's still a work in progress, I'm sure, for lots of business owners. But yeah, that period was exceptionally challenging. But there's been other times, when you've potentially lost someone's left that you thought you had a great relationship with, or again, the time the two boys committed fraud, and Dave, funny enough, who I mentioned earlier in the podcast, called me up. Sorry, I probably just grassed him up a little bit there. Called me up and said, "Why is these two guys at my Christmas party?" But they were working for me at the time, and that's some big thing when they were trying to steal a load of stuff. But yeah, like all tough moments, but those were the tough bits. And then luckily, there's been a lot more good bits than tough bits.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we talk about turning points, there is no bigger turning point than to go from that you literally padlock is around the door waiting just to be clipped in, to then turning it around. And I know from an inside point of view now that the business is in the healthiest position it's ever been, thanks to the guys who work on the finance team internally. So with that being a big turning point, understandably that's the biggest. But are there any other turning points where something happened which kind of really kicked on in terms of your thought process for like another 6 months or another year or a period of growth?
Yeah, I think different turning points. I think you coming in was a catalyst, because again, I had someone to be shoulder to shoulder with. I think we talk about being able to motivate people, motivate teams, but there were probably Fridays when I'm feeling it under stress, and it's hard to stand up and get everyone motivated. And you helped me carry that, I think, for a lot of those periods when I weren't on my game. There'll be times when you would really step up. So I think that was big, because it weren't always me that had to do it. I know it's difficult. I think we've been very lucky. I think Ugne joined in, one of our better staff. I think Jordan. I think it's them key hires that are the turning points, and they're not instant turning points, but when they get to a level, they become the turning points. And it's being able to share that weight with different people. I think that's a bit of a turning point. I think bringing Shane in as our finance director, he's the first person that's got hold of the finances and sorted the cash position out since, and we're in that took huge amounts of stress off us. I think turning points, positively and negatively, learning new industries and evolving and setting up other business on the side, whether that's, I'm still yet to see if it's going to be a positive turning point, but I think they definitely had an impact on our growth and myself as an owner, and yeah, I think I've had to step back more over the last 2 or 3 years when we've gone into those other businesses.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because whenever I speak to people about you or our business and they say, what has the success been? I always refer back to key recruits, and you always refer back to key recruits. And I think that just goes to show the power of recruiting a good individual. As you say, there's a few key people who, because of their position in our business and joining the business, we've been able to recruit 10 or 15 people. They've promoted people. So I think one of the great things about our business from working inside it is the ethos that it is all about the people and bringing good people in to do good work, to help each other. And I think that's it's interesting that you answered it exactly the same way I would, and I think that goes to show that not only we're on the same page, but I think most people in the business would say the same thing. So you did just mention other businesses, so I'm interested in this because it seems like as an entrepreneur, your mindset has shifted in some way, because when you set up the first business, you said, I don't want to be a jack of all trades. I want to be a master of one. I'm going to drill down, double down, triple down into this sector and then become an expert at that. Then, since having CAMHS Professionals and taking on the journey that it's been on, you've set up 3 sister businesses, so 3 sister organizations, whatever term you want to use. So how do you, I guess the better question to ask first is, what was the inspiration for those being set up? And then the second thing is, how do you try to still be a master of 4 different businesses when previously you were just that master of one? And how do you manage 4 businesses without overstretching yourself?
Yeah. Got to be completely honest. I still don't know if I am the master of 4 businesses anymore. It's very, very difficult, and that is something I'm still hugely working on. I'm interested to know that, I don't have a crystal ball, but it would be intriguing to know the impact that has had on our business and how different we would be if I hadn't have done that. But going back to what you were saying, being a children's mental health recruiter, right? For me, to be the best in that role, I was naturally curious, and I made it my business to know every good bit of talent in that space. And I had time for everyone, and I wanted to meet everyone. I wanted to know everyone. And I think that was part of me being successful. Part of that journey has been to meet service managers, commissioners, people inside the NHS at sort of really high levels, and all a part of that. And when I'm sell, I really don't think, like, we try not to genuinely sell in our industry, but when I'm looking for pain points, when I'm speaking to these people, there were certain consistent themes that were coming up again and again. And one of those themes was the rise in neurodiversity and the need for autism assessments, ADHD assessments. The NHS was specifically struggling, didn't have the clinicians to conduct those assessments. So what we found, even as a recruitment business, and you'll know this firsthand, a lot of, there was one clinic in particular, but there's a few clinics that had gone from small private clinics to winning big NHS contracts and then coming to us for the staffing infrastructure for those. And there was one client in particular, they were a bit rude to us actually, and they'd moaned about some CVs I'd sent, and I actually think that again that was probably part of my inspiration was, actually, if these clinics are coming to us for the staff to conduct these assessments anyway, what's to stop us bidding for some of these contracts in the NHS and setting up a service business or a clinic business? And that was my first inspiration to set up Young Wellbeing Hub, or what is now Young Wellbeing Hub. And we did it. We won an NHS contract to provide autism assessments with the largest NHS trust. They had the largest CAMHS footprint in the country, the trust we work with, and we successfully did that. And then we did a contract with Department for Education, and that's been a bit of a mad, up and down. And I'm, there's been great successes in that, but equally, lots of learning. Has not all been successful. Still nowhere near where I want that, where I want that business to be. So lots of learning there. So that's one of your answers, I guess. Second answer was, again, through the work that we were doing via CAMHS, we'd had a local authority get in contact with us and tell us that a young lady in the care system there was no placements for her or children's homes available for that young person in the country, and she was being held in a prison cell, literally because there is a lack of these children's homes in the country. In learning that space and knowing that space, we were able to, because we confidently got the best children's mental health nurses in the country, we were able to put an emergency staffing team in place for the local authority. They were really happy about it. And the more I got to understand that business, I quickly learned that literally there are local authorities throughout the country that have no homes for specific looked after children in the care system. that are extremely vulnerable. And I knew I had the staffing expertise to be able to support some of these young people. All I had to do was go and register children's homes. So we're in the process of registering 2 Ofsted registered children's homes at the moment, and we have an emergency care business as well. And so there's the answer to the second question, sorry.
Yep.
And the third was being probably inspired by my mum being the head teacher and working alongside a lady, Colette, who I've partnered with in the education space. And Colette was just brilliant. She's a social worker. She will run through brick walls for young people, and she inspired me. And I was like very close to setting up a charity on a couple of occasions, and I've not done it yet, but that's still in my sort of future, something I want to do. But I met Colette, and not that she's a charity, but I thought I need to get involved with the work. I need to back this lady, and I could feel her energy and what she could do for young people. So we originally decided we were going to set up a school together, like a special needs school or alternative provision. We were looking for sites. The right site hadn't come up, and I ended up. Colette had been on the books for a year now, and we still hadn't found the right site. So, as an interim measure, we went and won a tutoring contract with Essex. So we now provide tutors in Essex. And I would just say, I say tutoring service. We are more than a tutoring service. We've got a layer of teaching and holistic work that we do above that. So that's been really great. But the ambition was to always set up a school. And we're currently in the process of purchasing a school. Can't give too much details away because the deal's still ongoing, but it's nearly there. But rather than build a school from ground up, there's an opportunity that came up, and hopefully we'll have a school in the next 2 months that has 50 pupils, and that will come to fruition as well. So yeah, those were the inspirations between the 3 businesses, and I guess it's all linked. Like, it all stems back from the network that we built in children's mental health. So I think the idea is, having the best talent in children's mental health hopefully allows us to go and make them businesses, gives us an advantage in those areas as well. So it's kind of interlinked, and I see them complementing each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember when I first met Colette, and I was speaking to her, and I said, "How are you finding it?" And I think this supports 2 things. One is recruiting the right people, and then 2, what you've become, in my opinion, known for is giving the people that autonomy and freedom to kind of have a say and come up with ideas. And I remember when I first spoke to her, and she was like, "This is amazing. Like, we're really going to be able to make a difference. It's not going to be all red tape and box ticking. We're going to be able to really create something that is the gold standard for schools and special education needs or alternative provision." And I love Colette to pieces. And I just think, it just goes to show, bringing the right person in and give them the freedom to use their skills rather than impose your will on them is absolutely a massive thing. And it just goes to show with the success in terms of that business moving forward. Coming away a little bit from experience journey, I want to kind of dig into your mind a little bit, because one word that I would always use to describe you as an entrepreneur is niche. You always find the niche. So one question I want to ask you, a bit more like a self-reflection. When you see a niche, do you want to explore that niche, or do you feel compelled to, like you have to? Because I think that's really interesting for people who either are entrepreneurs or not, to kind of dig deeper into a bit more of the psychology of how it happens.
Yeah, it's difficult. I think I naturally spot problems everywhere I go, and I've got a problem where I think I can do things better. Like, and I don't know, it's probably an amazing talent, but it's also a bit of a curse in terms of I've got to be careful I don't spread myself, right? I've already got a lot going on. I moan that I'm stressed and work too much as it is, yet I'm in the background in my head looking. I wouldn't even say I'm looking, like things hit me and I can't not look at certain things.
I remember, sorry to interrupt, I remember there was a time when you and I were in the pub, and I said to you, from the place of love, I said, "Mike, I think you should ban yourself from exploring new businesses for 6 months." I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, and I think, no, and like you say, there's an example. I was inquiring about potentially starting a paddle business, paddle, fastest growing sport in the world. No one can get courts in East London. And we was like, shall I just get a site? Shall I just have a go? But I mean, I have to stop myself all the time. But I believe there's certain things I believe, and I honestly had them heart believe they would do well. And I guess there is an element of, at its core, I'm not afraid to take a calculated risk in order to, if I think it can be successful, right? So yeah, I don't know. My brain is just wired differently, and I just to come back to that, like it goes. I think it comes from that what I touched on earlier in terms of growing up Dagenham. I mean, I was mad at 12 years old. I was playing Habbo Hotel. I don't know if you remember that online game, and I became the richest person on that game through trading, and even played Championship Manager. Like I was obsessed with the transfers. Like I didn't care about the football side of it, but like theme hospital, anything where you could, build wealth in a game. It was just I was naturally, it was just I was ingrained to think like that, and I can't turn it off. It's difficult.
And in terms of looking back on your career as an entrepreneur, I know you're not someone that lives with regrets because you're somebody who learns so quickly from any mistakes or any errors and puts the best foot forward straight away. But looking back, are there any kind of mistakes that maybe are significant to you, or alternatively for any entrepreneurs out here listening, whether it be recruitment or something else, some key mistakes that if you could go back in time and speak to Michael Wigington day one in his bedroom, that you would say, maybe keep an eye out for this, or maybe be wary of these kind of things? Any mistakes that stick out?
It's really difficult because I think I've got no regrets. There's certainly a few people I wouldn't have hired if I had another go. But with everything you learn, right? And I think it's actually, I think what made us great or made me great was actually my lack of inexperience and my ability to not have a go. I think if I'd have gone to a bigger corporate for longer, I wouldn't have thought I could be as successful as I was being in an off-framework recruitment agency. I didn't have no preconceived ideas of what worked and what didn't. I just went and tried to build relationships with people very high up in the NHS from early on, and I weren't, and it stood me in good stead. And actually, our own hiring philosophy has been the same. Bringing people in that aren't really experienced has probably done better for us because they don't have a preconceived idea of what works and what doesn't. And actually, would I have changed any of it? I don't think I honestly wouldn't. I personally wouldn't have changed anything. But in hindsight, even if I hadn't, is there advice I could give myself? I don't know. I think it's just to keep learning, keep evolving. I've always been. I'm not afraid to take on ideas from different people, from the team. I like to think I give people enough freedom to sort of run with things. If it doesn't work, we switch it up, we change it. And I think that's been my philosophy. I'm not afraid to make mistakes. And I think actually people that are really scared to make mistakes, that could be some of the things that hold people back.
Absolutely. I remember when I first started and you said to me, what do you want to get out of this? And I said, I just want to be a successful recruiter. And you went, no, what do you really want to get out of this? And I said, I want to be financially independent. And you went, what else? I was like, I want to own my own flat. And you said, what does it need to have? And I said, it has to have a spare room. I just always felt like if you have a spare room in a flat in London, you're like the king of the world. And then you said, what else? And I was like, well, I've got $4,000 in debt and I need to clear that. And I was 30 years old and I was embarrassed to say it. And you went, what else? And I was like, I'd just like to have some money to have some beers at the weekend. And then you said, what else? And I was like, I'm so broke, I'm nicking toilets out of the bathroom, toilet rolls, out of the bathroom. And I remember you just said to me, now I know why you're really here. Let's me and you work together and make all those things happen. And I'd gone in there with the Hollywood answer, I want to be a great recruiter. And I came out of there feeling empowered in terms of like, I'm going to achieve all these things, no longer nicking toilet rolls. And so for whilst you're this super successful person on LinkedIn and you've got a really good reputation with NHS, private and local authorities, I'll always remember you as the guy that bought me a beer on a Friday because I couldn't afford it. I was like, Jay, don't worry. One day you'll be doing this for
just to touch on that, you got all those things, right?
Yeah. Quicker than I said. I wanted them.
Yeah. So
I think I was stopped nicking toilet rolls within the first couple of days. So sorry to the building manager of South Woodford office. You probably thought, where's all these toilet rolls going? Yeah, that's because of me. Okay, so let's switch it up a bit. So we've spoken about culture and we've spoken about people quite a lot. So what's your philosophy on when you're looking for new people and your philosophy of bringing people in? How do you, somebody who is a self-proclaimed gut instinct recruiter, how have you got it right? I know you got it wrong a few times, but how have you got it right so many times? What do you look out for? And what does a person need to do for you to feel like, yeah, this is a good person to go with?
I think you want people that want to learn. I think it's you're looking for sponges, right? You're looking for people that are ready to throw themselves at the job with everything they've got. You know, I go back to myself, and like honestly, that period of my life, I had so much energy, and I was so ready to make it a success. So you're looking for people that potentially like naturally have got a bit of people skills. I think you do need that, and I think those bits are quite hard to teach. I think you're looking at the way they interact with you in an interview. You're watching the way they interact with other people that are naturally quite good with people. It's a lot easier to work with them, but then you need them to have the discipline to not get distracted during work, the discipline to push themselves. So you're looking for discipline, people skills, resilience for sure. Like, I think we have to be honest, and when we're selling this job to people, no one likes recruiters, right? It's a tough gig, and a lot of the time until you're getting your personality across, a lot of people are going to judge you. A lot of people aren't going to give you the time of the day. So resilient, specifically, and ambitious people that can buy into our vision and want to come along for the ride. I think, and it is difficult. That first year in recruitment is really, really tough. But I think if you can stick it out, especially when you're with a growing company, we've always wanted to bring people along that journey and make them feel part of that. And I think we've been very good at doing that. And again, you talk about a recipe for success. I think most people have got a story. Oh, I joined when we were only 20 heads, and now we're 55 heads, and they've been part of that journey, and they've gone from being the most junior person in the office to one of the most seniors. And I think, yeah, we need people that want to come along for that ride. It's still very difficult to bottle up exactly what you're looking for. I mean, if we knew exactly what it was and we could identify it every time, we'd be in a very special place.
Yeah, we could just start trading that for £1 million a day. So, all right, so that's for the new people you're looking for, and you kind of touched a little bit on what they're like when they first start. So what do you think it is that separates the very best recruiters that you've worked with in whichever business you've been in from the recruiters who can make a good living, who can survive in that world? What is the difference that you've kind of noticed in the top people to the good people?
I think it's that curious mindset, right? And I think I see a lot of recruiters get to a level where they've got a comfortable desk, they've got 20 candidates out, contractors working for them, and a lot of people are happy with that, and they won't do an hour business development on top of that. They won't do an hour fresh resourcing to try and find more candidates to build on that. And I think that's really common. And what they'll do is they'll get relaxed and they'll rely on the candidates that they've already got to give them referrals, or their clients that they've already got to give them more jobs, and people get comfortable. And I think the best recruiters out there are relentless. They have that discipline. They're going to keep pushing. And a little bit like how I've done in business, in terms of like you keep pushing the goalpost, you don't get comfortable, and you keep pushing yourself. And I think, I'm not going to lie, like I think 95% of recruiters aren't built like that.
Yeah.
And they do get to a level, and it normally depends on their lifestyle or what they need to be comfortable. Have they got enough to pay rent? Have they got enough to go on a couple of nice holidays? A lot of people will stop there. But I've seen a very few that are wired a little bit differently, and they're the best. And I go back to having that curious mindset. If you can tie that with people that like genuinely want to get to know the industry, like we spend so long talking to candidates, therapists, nurses, people in the industry. Like if you've been working in it for a year and you don't have some basic knowledge of that industry, you're doing your job wrong. You're not taking an interest. You're not getting to know people's real pains and what it's like for them working on wards. So I think the two things combined.
Yeah, I remember working on the therapies desk. I kind of considered myself a career therapist in terms of understanding the pains of their career for somebody who was a therapist as their career. Yeah, I think that's really interesting. So in terms of, we'll kind of change tact and do a bit of self-reflection. I know when we were speaking about this the other day, I kind of sat down and thought a lot about what my perspective of you is in terms of what's made you successful, what's my thoughts, what's my points of view. So I guess you've worked with multiple people now over a long period of time, and in 4 different businesses. What kind of manager do you think people would say you are, or what do you think they would think your strengths are, or what kind of manager would you hope they would say that you are?
Yeah, it's a hard one, isn't it? Because you've got to ask people that. But
Yeah.
I don't know, what can I confidently say? I give it my all. I've dedicated it's quite sad really in terms of my personal life. You know, it comes second sometimes, which is quite crap. You know, I dedicate a lot to my work, and hopefully people see that straight away, so they know, you know, I'm not asking you to care when I don't care. Like, I'm putting everything into this, so should you. And I think that's one of the things. I try and lead by example where I can. Like I say, I genuinely take an interest, genuinely care about people. I'm pushing myself on a daily basis, and I'd like to think people can see that, and I'd like to think people know that I'm working in the background in whatever format to continue to build the brand to that then has an impact on them, right? So the more successful we are putting time into the marketing side of things, I'm out there jumping in meetings to win big clients still, which in turn helps them, gives them roles. I think I'm just a bit of a hands-in captain that leads by example, and I think that's my style. I don't know. I'd be intrigued to know what you think on this one.
Yeah, I think it's funny because I remember when I used to do sales, I used to run this one particular meeting, which was called the Two Generals. And it was supposed, you know, the film Gladiator.
Okay, yeah.
And it spoke about the two basic leaders. You've got Commodus, the deranged son of Marcus Aurelius, power mad, power hungry. And then you've got Maximus, who is like the general in the trench. And I think there's one general that instructs from the tent and says, yeah, go out and try not to die. And then you've got the general in the trench that's like the first one over, and he's like, we're all going to go together. And I think whilst that's a massive strength of yours, I think you can really see that it's built in you when an opportunity to do BD comes up and you can't say no to it. Or there's been times where you were running multiple businesses and you'd still be on the phone to candidates, or you'd still be on the phone to clients. And it's not to say that that's beneath you, because that's what we live for. But your time was spent running multiple businesses, but you couldn't let that go. And I think there's an element outside looking in where you always just want to keep one foot in the trench, just so you know just how it feels. You don't forget it, because I think you get too far away from that, you can be the manager that goes, well, 10 years ago when I was a manager, this is what we did. And I think from the outside looking in, all the years I've spent with you, I think you've always had that one foot in the trench with the troops. So that's probably a good contributor to our culture and why you keep your finger on the pulse with that, because you never get too far away from that, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I would take that.
Yeah, well, there's loads of other things as well. Right, so Mike, the entrepreneur now, you said that sometimes it can impact your social life. I think that's, most entrepreneurs would be like, hallelujah, when you say that. How are you in the future going to make sure that you don't just end up being this entrepreneur hamster on a cycle, perpetually looking for more and more success? How do you ever get to a point where you go, right, I need to take a moment now and just appreciate it? Because as we've spoken about before, you go from one niche to the next, one opportunity to the next. You're probably in a position now where you thought CAMHS Professionals would be rolling. You probably didn't think you'd have 4 businesses. So what does the future look like for you? And when are you ever going to take that opportunity to go, I'm doing all right here?
Yeah, I probably don't look back, and I'm constantly looking at what's next, and that is just built in me, and I need to work on that and probably get better.
Is that hard at times?
Yeah, like you say, it's brilliant, and it's very difficult as well. You know, I'm worried. I think if you get too comfortable and I've made it great, you know, if you're standing still, you're not moving forward, right? And it's difficult. And when you've got 40 ambitious staff that want to grow, the only way everyone's going to grow is if you keep growing collectively and you keep looking forward. So I think there's how you know, it is still a work in progress. I still don't know if it's the right thing. Maybe we do need to calm down. I think for me, the goal at the moment, and we've just put our senior leadership team all on extra leadership coaching, is to try and develop that second tier of leadership, and even across the other businesses to have real leadership in all of that. And I'm still learning on how to step back. And funny enough, I just bought a load of books yesterday. I think they turn up, but it's about trying to build businesses where you're not entrenched in all of it, and actually getting better at coaching as opposed to giving people the answers. And I think I think I'm still working on that.
It's the whole kind of teach a man to fish thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's I think I never had any management training, like literally in my career until actually I put myself on the course with some of the leadership at the moment, and it's just got me completely looking at things differently. And obviously we've been doing a lot right to get to where we are, but I think that scalability and actually being able to step back a little bit, you know, we probably still working on the systems in place to make sure that we can do that properly. So for me, the future is second tier management, actually being in a situation where I can hover above it all and actually have developed people in a way that they can lead each business forward independently, not so much with me leading it. And I think we're getting there. I think there's a part of that that's ready, but I think there's still more work we can do. So that's kind of the vision for the next year or so.
Absolutely. So what does the future look like for the businesses? That can be short term, mid term, long term. I know that you've said that you want to put these infrastructures in place where we've got more kind of levels of leadership and training, which I think we've done great work at CAMHS Professionals about that. But what would you like to see from those businesses that you're managing at the moment in the future?
Again, with CAMHS Professionals, just keep increasing the contract numbers that we have out at the moment, providing more support to services out there, having an impact, or specifically in those services with huge waiting times across the country, really making a difference and continuing to grow. I think on the children's home business, we've got 2 Ofsted applications in planning. I think that will organically grow over the next 5 years. We'd probably open 2 homes a year potentially. I think on the clinic, that is probably my biggest frustration to date. I've still not got that to where I want it to be. I know there's huge problems out there in the country. We're not where we need to be. We've had tastes of doing really good work, but I think I would love to get that in a better pace in particular. And I'm going to learn a whole lot through the school business. You know, I'm going to be the proprietor of a school. It's a bit of a scary thought at the same time, but I'm intrigued to learn a lot about that. I think there's a lot of good work we can do, and excited to see that space.
Right, so just before we finish off, I just want to I know you're a busy man, so I just want to take the opportunity, whilst I've got your time, just to see if I can get some advice for future generations. So what would you say from your experience, would be the best bits of advice for people looking to start in recruitment, or maybe you've already started in it as well?
I think the first thing is to have a think about what industry, what sector you're going to be going into. Like, there's a million people doing IT recruitment, and that's not to say you can't do it, but if you're going to go into IT recruitment, be trying to look for a niche, a growing market. We want to avoid something that's completely saturated, right? I think for us, we offer something unique where we're genuinely in a great sector that makes a difference, and there isn't 500 recruitment agencies trying to do the same thing as us. So I would say, look at the industry you're going into. It helps if you're passionate about it and you really care. Another thing, if you've got a family member that works in that sector, you know, if you've got some experience in that sector, by all means, an extra reason to get into it. And then I think it's about looking for an opportunity where you're going to, you know, the demographic of their staff, the learning development function, to be asking all those questions in interview. Does it feel right? Is it going to be a good fit? Am I going to get training? Am I going to get support? I think those are key things to look at when you're looking for a role in recruitment. And then, yeah, beyond that, once you're in it, it's about being super curious, you know, genuinely looking at problems and trying to solve them for people. For me, that was easy. It was never really selling when you're genuinely trying to help people and take away people's pain points. Like, it's a nice thing to do. So I think be really curious, get to know your industry, be a thought leader, be resilient, ride out that first 6 months to a year is going to be difficult. Ride it out. The good times will come if you work hard and you're consistent. And then just to try and have fun. Like you say, I think it's really important to have fun and find an environment when you can have fun, because I think some of your best work comes when you're having fun. So, yeah.
Great advice. A lot, and nearly all of that resonates with me because you've given me it in the 7 years we've worked together. Okay, last one then. So, entrepreneurs, a rare breed, but there are plenty of them out there, and many of whom will be listening to this. So, what would your advice be for entrepreneurs, having been a serial entrepreneur over these last 7 years?
Don't do it. No. I think, yeah, it's a tough one. Like, I would advise, if you genuinely see an area where you think you can make a difference, I think if you think you can honestly do better than what's being done in that sector, or if you're doing something different to what's already there, like for me, it's a no-brainer. And I was lucky in when I chose to get into this industry, I purely believed I could create a better environment for recruiters. I believed that we could make a difference with the work that we were carrying out. And yeah, I knew that. Yeah, I guess you need that fire in your belly. You got to have complete belief in what the venture you're about to go on, right? Because again, to bring people with you, that vision's got to be so strong. And if you've got all of that, then I would say go for it. But also be aware that it's not for everyone, and it's okay not to want to put yourself through that risk, and there will be a lot of pressure that comes with that, and just be prepared for it as well if you are going to go for it. But I've got super respect for anyone who has the tenacity to take the leap and go for it. So, yeah, and if you get it right, it can change your life. So, yeah.
Shout out to all the entrepreneurs out there. Well, I think that's it then, Mike. So 7.5 years ago, you interviewed me. You did a pretty good job. Hopefully, I've done half as good a job interviewing you today as you did for me 7 years ago. Thanks for everything you've done for me over the years. I wish you all the best of luck in the future. And I guess we'll have another interview 7 years from now and see where we're at then. But thanks for your time today, and thanks for everything along the way, mate. Appreciate it.
Cheers. Thank you, Joe.